Hey everybody, Eric here. Jumping on now with some news from the day and three topics that I'm going to talk about with some receipts. One is I forgot, the aluminum and steel tariffs started either yesterday or today. And also, there's a possibility those tariffs may be doubled. The second is the Department of Education cut their workforce in half. Yes, half. I think about 1,300 people lost their jobs from the Department of Education. And finally, the European Union and Canada are done, and they are doing reciprocal tariffs on some of our products and everything. And finally, I will ask you to follow this person because she is great and she is doing a call of action, particularly for the Democrats. All right, so let's go through here. So first, the government shutdown. The deadline is Friday midnight, um, March 14th. This coming Friday. Today is Wednesday. The House passed it yesterday, 217 to 213. Two people did not vote, and there are three seats that are empty. One, the House rep passed away a couple of weeks ago. Matt Gaetz' position is still not filled, and another rep resigned. So three seats in the House are empty. Two people did not vote at all, and then one Republican jumped over to the Democrats and said no for the bill, and one Democrat jumped over to the Republicans saying yes. My video that I did last night was talking about those two reps, but I'll put it in the description of this video about who did not vote, and one of them is from our state, North Carolina, my state, who didn't even vote. And I don't care. You could have gotten a proxy. Either that or maybe you were scared about something. But anyway, let's dive through. So I'm going to bring up a video. This is from Chuck Schumer, who is the minority leader in the Senate for the Democrats from the state of New York. And there was a heated meeting apparently with the Democratic caucus, and this is about what the Democrats are saying about this bill and what is going to happen as far as the vote. And again, House Speaker Johnson, Mike Johnson from the state of Louisiana, said if the Democrats in the Senate do not vote for this, then the shutdown is on their shoulders. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. First of all, and I said this in my last video, why did Mike Johnson, who is the Speaker of the House, wait so long to vote on this bill, the continuing resolution? They could have started doing this right after the day of the inauguration, January 20th. In fact, they didn't have to wait for that. They could have done that after they took their oath, which was on January the 3rd. They didn't have to wait because the purse strings are not from the executive department branch. The purse strings are controlled by the Congress, particularly the House. Congress does that, not the executive branch, regardless of whether it's Elon or Trump. So let's go ahead and show you the video, and then we'll talk about that. And I'm sorry, something's going on. There we go. Something's going on with my software for this video. I'm just waiting for the video to play.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says Democrats would reject a government funding bill that Republicans wrote and passed through the House. Without a new funding law before Friday at midnight, the government could face a shutdown. Schumer said today Republicans drafted the continuing resolution without any input from congressional Democrats. Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon also writing on Blue Sky, quote, "I'm voting no on the CR. Trump and Musk are taking a wrecking ball to vital services for veterans, seniors, and kids." Republicans control 53 Senate seats and need 60 votes to pass a funding bill.
Okay, let me make sure this is not going to play. All right, so there you go. The Democrats are actually going to vote no. Do not take House Speaker Mike Johnson's word, because I believe that they did not even talk to the Democrats about this bill. Because the lie is that Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security will not be touched. Well, the Energy and Commerce Committee has to find $880 billion to cut. And the only way that they can find that is through Medicaid. Medicaid is under the Energy and Commerce Committee. So them saying that Medicaid is not going to be touched, that is a lie. That is part of the bill. It is a lie. And if you don't believe me, go to whitehouse.gov, go to the House side, and look at the Clean Continuing Resolution bill and read it. Mike Johnson and the Republicans and Trump are lying. And so there is a possibility, a good possibility, that the government will shut down. But remember, just like I said in my video yesterday and back in 2024, when that bill also was about hold up, and the government did shut down, but they did do something changed on the Saturday, and then when the government, when the new week came the next Monday, the government was back open. So that's probably going to have the same thing. That's why I called this the circus. It is. It's a circus. It's not Ringling Brothers, but it's a circus. Excuse me. So let's go on. So if you have federal workers who are in your friend circle, your family, or that you know, or even if you don't know them, people have lost their jobs and are about to lose their jobs. So think about that. Think about that. As well as understanding that elections have consequences. And this is a consequence of the election that happened in November of 2024. So let's move on. So the next one is a lot of people know, I forgot that the tariff for aluminum and steel started yesterday. It's 25%. 25%. Even though the day before, Trump talked to the leader of the government of Ontario to stop them from taxing the electricity for Americans in 4 states that get their electricity from Canada. Yes. And so stopped. Oh, sorry. I was pulling up the other video while we were trying to stop. And I hate these ads on YouTube. You can't stop them. In 2019. Back then. So like I was saying, now he's talking about, and this will be on this video and the next video, that Trump is now thinking about doubling the tariff on aluminum and steel from 25% to 50%. And that is going to hurt, particularly brewers. Their cans are aluminum. That tin comes from aluminum. And some of the local brewers here in Charlotte, North Carolina, have already said they'll absorb some of it, but at the end of the day, the prices are going to go up, and they don't want to do that. They don't. They're trying to get. One guy even said, "Please understand, we're not trying to get rid of customers. We're trying to get customers and keep customers, but we can't absorb all of this." So yes, elections have consequences, and this is who was voted into the presidency and then brought Elon Musk into the government. So let's go to this one, but this video is also about the Department of Education, where 1,300 people lost their job.
Layoffs at the Department of Education after the firings and earlier buyouts. The department has been slashed in half since President Trump took office. Senior political correspondent Rachel Scott has that story. Good morning, Rachel.
George, good morning to you. And these are sweeping and mass layoffs that are happening at the Department of Education, and what the Education Secretary is calling the first step toward dismantling the agency altogether. Overnight, the Department of Education gutted. More than 1,300 workers told they're being laid off, now cutting the agency roughly in half. Education Secretary Linda McMahon saying those cuts are just the first step.
What we did today was to take the first step of eliminating what I think is bureaucratic bloat.
The department is already the smallest of all cabinets.
Did you hear that? Linda McMahon, who has no experience whatever about government, much less education, as the former wife and widow of McMahon, who was over wrestling, and then she took over the wrestling area industry as well, has doesn't know anything about this. And yet she is the secretary and doing what Trump wants her to do, and she's calling it government bloating, fat.
Cabinet level agencies, but is responsible for everything from managing federal loans for colleges to enforcing civil rights laws in schools. The leader of the nation's largest teachers union says students will pay the price.
There is no way that that's going to lead to faster service. Calls will go unlistened to, emails will go unread. We know that.
McMahon asks what will happen to some of the department's critical programs, like Pell Grants and funding for students from low-income families.
We kept all of the right people and the good people to make sure that the outward-facing programs, the grants, the appropriations that come from Congress, all of that are being met, and none of that's going to fall through the cracks.
McMahon says the president has given her a mandate to strip down the agency and work with Congress to eliminate it. Democrats blasting the Trump administration's push to shrink the size of the federal government.
Throughout this administration, we're seeing cuts. Services will not be provided for, in this particular case, for our schools and the.
Just to note, The person you just saw, that is Alma Adams. She is the House of Representative for the 12th District here in North Carolina, which covers most of Charlotte, North Carolina. So if you didn't know who your representative was and you live in the 12th District, that's who it is, Alma Adams.
Protections for our young people.
So sources say the president has floated the idea of moving some of the agency's work under the Department of Treasury. The president on the campaign trail repeatedly said he wanted to return the power back to the states. It is worth noting that the Department of Education does not decide what is taught in schools. That's already decided at a state and local level, Michael.
All right, Rachel, that is important to know. Thank you so much for that.
All right, so another note about the Department of Education. As you just heard, that reporter said the Department of Education does not decide who teaches or what is taught. But Linda, see, that's what I said. Linda McMahon does not know what she's talking about. She doesn't. I mean, and the goal is to get rid of the Department of Education altogether. But like I was saying, or about to say before the video started too early, it depends on what state you live in and where your children go to school. I could not find it, but I saw a YouTube video today, and I couldn't find it again for this video, but I saw a video today of Senator Tommy Tuberville from the great state of Alabama, and he just can't help himself. Today, he was interviewed, I believe it was Fox News, where he said, we teach our kids differently than anybody else. So we will take care of our kids and let other states take care of their kids. Really? Really? And Tommy Tuberville is the best that Alabama can send up to Washington? Really? Of course, this may also explain why Tommy Tuberville has been sent back time and time again, but also why Alabama is consistently, over multiple demographics, always in the bottom. Not a good look. But you don't hear Tommy talking about that, do you? Not a good look. And while I appreciate my education, but I live in North Carolina, and while North Carolina does do some things better, North Carolina is one of the slowest states to enact anything. And so I'm not going to throw too much shade at Alabama, but Tommy Tuberville might want to think about what is actually happening in his state, and maybe he might want to go back and do a tour around his state before he actually opens his mouth about how Alabama teaches their students. So let's move on. So now we're at the video where we're talking about how the European Union and Canada are going to reciprocate on nearly I believe the number is $28 billion worth of the United States products going into the European Union and Canada. Yes. They're not playing. They're not playing. And they're right to do so. They're right to do so. Someone said, particularly with the trade war that's going on with Canada, it is the stupidest trade war ever happening on this planet. The stupidest trade war. But as Tabitha said on one of her videos, and I follow her. Again, Tabitha Speaks. You should follow her too. And Coach D, you should follow him too. He's out in California. He's a track coach. But they are also political content creators on the left side. As both of them have said, why is everybody surprised and shocked that Trump is doing this? The words came out of his mouth. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. Believe them. But the MAGA supporters, if you remember during the election cycle, were interviewed about his rhetoric. And they said, oh, that's just political speech. He doesn't mean it. He's not going to do this. He's not going to hurt our friends and everything. Well, as I've said many times over ad nauseum, to the point where I'm sick of me doing it, guess what? The finding out phase of hashtag FAFO. And of course, if you don't know what it means, fuck around, which everybody did who voted for Trump. You fucked around, and now we're in the finding out phase. And that finding out phase is not going to end anytime soon, except for the upcoming midterm elections. And those of us who are on the left, including independents, who will hold their cards back like they're in some poker game, I don't care what side you're on, but you're calling yourself an independent thinker, you better damn well think about what's going on right now so that the House and the Senate can be taken back on the left side, because the right ain't doing shit. And yes, I said it. Or as the vernacular says, and some of the kids said, I said what I said. But let's move on. I'm going to pull up this video so that y'all can see exactly what the news is saying about these countermeasures on U.S. goods.
With that EU response, then, what are the details?
Well, I think the details are still a little bit hazy, Tom, but you mentioned it right there, 26 billion euros when it comes to the goods that are imported from the United States into the EU. Basically, you're opening kind of fire when it comes to those potential reciprocal tariffs. You go to look into the details, though, in terms of what the biggest trade relationship looks like between the EU and the United States. Let me walk you through a good chunk of it, because a lot of it is baked into the energy story from about 2 years ago. The biggest exports that are coming from the United States into the EU are things like energy, for example, petroleum oils, and especially LNG is going to be a big, big one. The second there is medicinal and pharmaceutical products, and then it's followed by things like engines, aircrafts, and car parts. So you are really seeing a lot of these major sectors that we keep an eye on in Europe, the car sector in Germany, arguably in Spain and Italy as well. Then things like pharmaceuticals going into especially the medicinal kind of industry here in the UK is a big one. I know this is for the EU, but that's one to keep in mind in terms of the ripple effects there. And then, of course, the oil story, the energy story, the LNG story coming from the United States into Europe, really replacing a lot of those flows from Russia. That's where a lot of that trade is baked into.
There's a moment.
All right, and so there you have it. There you have it. And just so you know, I thought the video would have shown it, but it didn't. 26 billion euros equals about 28 billion American dollars. And so there you have it. They're not playing. They're not. I mean, what I would say is check your 401k, because my best friend, when he came in from work today, because I actually am his housemaid, said that he lost approximately right around his 401k value has gone down pretty close to $13,000 because of the way it's being invested, due to the scare in the stock market about the implication of what the tariffs will do. And there are still people on the street who are being interviewed. Even the White House press secretary still doesn't have an understanding of what a tariff is. So in a short sentence timeline, I'm going to tell you what a tariff is. A tariff is a tax, and the tariff is placed on goods that are imported into the country. It could be companies that are outside of the United States, or it could be products from countries outside of the United States. For example, you hear this in the news all the time about products being tariffed for China. So here's the thing. Let's say that I am a retail store owner. I own a business that does t-shirts. I could get my t-shirts probably in the United States, but it would be at a too high of a price for me because there are very, very few manufacturers of t-shirts. So I'm going to start looking out of the country. And mind you, this is nothing new. So I might look at Mexico, I might look at Canada, I might look at China. But let's say that I decide to go ahead and get my t-shirts from China. So when those t-shirts come to the ports, let's say that I live in North Carolina, and so the major port for the Southeast is, I believe, it's either Savannah or Charleston. My representative, or me, trying to get those t-shirts off the docks, it's not going to happen until somebody, whether it's me or me sending somebody down there, has to pay that tariff amount. China's not paying it. No. I have to pay it to get those t-shirts because it is a product from China, and I have to pay that in order to get that product off the docks. And the longer it sits on the dock, the more I'm going to have to pay. And then once I get those t-shirts to my stores and be ready to put out, I'm going to have to make a decision on who is going to eat that. Is it going to be me? Is it going to be my customers? Or am I going to do a percentage that say I will take this percentage, but the rest of it is going to have to be paid by the customer? Whichever it is, if the customer is going to pay, that means the price of that t-shirt will go up. And so prior to the tariff, let's say that my t-shirt price was $15. Well, now my tariff price, say, might go up to $18 or $20 or maybe even $25. And then you, the customer, will have to decide if you can afford that. You're no longer going to be paying $15 for it. Whether it's $18, $20, or $25, you're going to have to decide, is my t-shirt worth the price that you're going to pay so that I can keep you as my customer? So, like I said, when I was talking about earlier at the top of the video about breweries who are nervous about these tariffs on aluminum and steel because of the cans that they use, the machine parts that they have to use, and other industries. Think about the industries that use steel. These buildings that are built that have steel in them. Cars have steel in them in some places. But steel, the price of steel is going to go up. The price of aluminum, even going to the grocery store to get a box of aluminum foil, it's going to go up if it hasn't already. Oh, and just as a side note, even though we're not talking about it today, eggs year over year have risen in price nearly 60%. And they are forecasted to go up to at least 40% more by the time 2025 is over. So you don't hear him saying anything about trying to eradicate avian flu, because avian flu is the reason that the price of eggs has to go up. The farmers can't just eat that. They have to have money to buy new chicks, and it takes time for those chicks to be egg-laying ready. Again, elections have consequences. And so finally, I'm going to show you a video of Politics Girl. I love her. She is right to the point. There's no fat in it, and she is so matter of fact. And I want you to follow her. She's great. She is a Canada immigrant, and she is an American citizen now. And she will even tell you something about her Canadian background. But she is on point. So I'm going to play this short video. This video is about, she did a video that no one voted for this, and she is hot about what's going on. So let me bring that up for you.
The U.S. stock market is in free fall. Trump's tariffs are destroying our economy. Elon's Doge is mass firing people. The cost of living is up. Our international reputation is down. But Republicans are on TV saying black is white and left is right and up is down and everything's Joe Biden's fault. At what point will people stop accepting this pass the buck bullshit? Clearly, Republicans have gotten away with pretending everything is Democrats' fault for so long that they have lost the ability to do anything else. The fact of the matter is, Joe Biden left the White House with a strong economy, record high job growth, a growing stock market, a huge foundation for future manufacturing, and lower inflation than any peer nation. Lowered, I might add, without triggering the recession that everybody said was guaranteed. Yeah, costs were high, but Donald Trump ran on lowering those costs on day one. And not only has he not done that, everything is worse now. Quantifiably worse. In 2 months, the man has made us poorer, less healthy, less employed, and less safe. How long can Donald Trump and the Republicans continue to point fingers before people realize that this is on them? That they control every lever of the federal government? That this is their terrible policies we're living with? Their terrible decisions causing people to lose their jobs and farms and lives, be that in a plane crash or from a long ago eradicated disease? Enough passing the buck. Enough finger pointing. The party of personal responsibility has to own this. Donald Trump is a terrible leader who does not understand the job he's been elected to do. He is a terrible manager, incapable of hiring competent people or controlling the behavior of those he has employed. He is a terrible American who has aligned himself with our enemies and alienated our friends for no one's benefit but his own. Our current president has surrounded himself with people who say yes when they should say no and neutered the group meant to hold him accountable. And now he has all of them defending the indefensible. At some point, the American public has to say enough, or we will lose the chance to say anything again. Our lives, our economy, our country, the world order should not have to suffer this man's ineptitude for 1 second more. Republicans, you need to stand up and you need to vote against this guy. For God's sakes, take your power back. Remove this man from leadership. You know you should. You'll still be in charge. You will still have all the power of the federal government, but the country might have a fighting chance. 50% tariffs on Canada? Abandoning NATO? An impending depression? Are you people out of your minds? No one signed up for this. Maybe stop worrying about being primaried and realize that people might not vote for you at all if you continue to let this happen.
And there you have it from Politics Girl. Actually, let me go back here so you can see it. Politics Girl. Search Politics Girl on YouTube and you won't be sorry. And she's right. She's right. Mike Johnson said that if the government shuts down, it's on the Democrats. No way in hell is it going to be on the Democrats, even though they're going to spin it that way, because this is not the Democratic bill. They weren't included in the forming of this bill. And so if the government shuts down, it is on the Republicans for doing this. No clearer divide between the two parties has there ever been in the history of our government, save maybe the era of slavery. 2026 is not far away. There are already Senate races being set up. One senator has already decided not to run for re-election. And most of these people who have decided not to run for re-election, they're going into their 70s. I looked at the ages of all these people who have decided not to run anymore, and they're in their 70s. There was a House of Representative guy who was able to view and attend the State of the Union address, or the speech to the joint sessions, whatever they want to call that first speech after the inauguration. And he passed away shortly after that. His house position hasn't been filled up yet, along with two others who resigned. And of course, like I said, Matt Gaetz' position has been open since he was nominated, first nominated, and then for Attorney General, and then he resigned because he was nominated because he was going to jail. The House committee who was investigating him, they were going to indict him on information, but that's some information that we probably won't see, not the full scope of it. And of course, he withdrew his name from being the Attorney General because if he had gone ahead and taken it during his confirmations hearings, he would have been stupid to take that to go ahead and go forward with it, because they would have asked him about what happened in Florida. So for the interest of my YouTube channel, I'm not going to speak on it because I'm not a lawyer, but you can look it up. Look it up. Look up Matt Gaetz. and then you'll see what he has been accused of. And I will say this, he has a lot of stuff in common with Pete Hegseth, with Donald Trump, and with Elon Musk. I'll say that. That should be enough information to get you started on researching and understand why Matt Gaetz is no longer in the federal government. All right? So there you have it. The three major issues that I saw today: the aluminum and steel tariffs, the looming government shutdown, and the reciprocal tax on tariffs that are going to be on our products going to the European Union. Elections have consequences. They do. Elections have consequences. But like I said at the top of the video, I will go ahead and put in the description the Republican who flipped, the Democrat who flipped, and the two House of Representatives who did not vote, as well as, because I was scratching my head when I added the numbers up, that's 430. Where are the other 5 votes? And that's when I found out that 2 people didn't vote and there were 3 empty seats. But I'll put that information in the description so that you will be educated on that, just like I educated myself when I did the research. All right? So I'm going to end this video, and we'll wait to see when the next shoe will drop of the continuing saga of the American circus. See you on the next video.